close your eyes for a moment and remember the last time you truly played. Perhaps it was a game, a sport, or simply a moment of creative abandon. What you might not realize is that in that instant, your unconscious mind was orchestrating an intricate dance, one that began long before you were born, woven into the very fabric of what makes us human. Let's begin our journey together, exploring the hidden currents beneath the surface of play. Our story starts with a fundamental truth. Deep within your brain, there exists what neuroscientists call the play circuit, a network of neural pathways that lights up the moment you engage in playful activity. This isn't something you learned or were taught, you were born with it, just as every mammal carries this ancient inheritance. When researchers observe the brains of children at play, they see the same patterns of activation that appear in young wolves tumbling over each other, in dolphin calves spinning through the waves, in lion cubs mock fighting in the grass. Your unconscious mind knows how to play before you even understand the concept, guiding your movements and responses through millions of years of evolutionary wisdom. This play circuit doesn't live in just one place. It extends from the deep, primitive structures of your brainstem, through the emotional centers of your limbic system, and reaches into the sophisticated networks of your prefrontal cortex. Here's something remarkable. When you play, your unconscious mind actually suppresses the fear response generated by your amygdala, the brain's alarm system. This is why children can wrestle and roughhouse without feeling genuinely threatened, why a game of tag brings delight rather than terror. Your unconscious creates what researchers call a safe emergency, allowing you to practice dangerous scenarios without the dangerous consequences. It's preparing you for real challenges while keeping you perfectly protected. But the unconscious mind does something even more subtle during play. Research has revealed that when you're engaged in play, especially the kind that involves uncertainty and surprise, your brain releases a precise cocktail of neurochemicals. Dopamine floods your system, but not in the overwhelming rush of addiction, rather in gentle waves that keep you curious, keep you exploring. Your unconscious is essentially training itself, using pleasure as a teacher. Each time you solve a puzzle during play, navigate a social exchange in a game, or master a new physical skill, your brain marks that pattern as valuable, storing it away in unconscious memory where it can be accessed automatically when needed. Think about how children play, and you'll notice something fascinating. They naturally alternate between periods of chaos and order. A child builds a tower of blocks carefully, methodically, and then knocks it down with gleeful abandon. They create rules for an imaginary game, and moments later, they break those very rules. Your unconscious mind is doing something profound here. It's teaching itself flexibility, learning that patterns can be both created and dissolved. Psychologists have discovered that this alternation between structure and chaos during play actually strengthens what they call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between different ways of thinking. Your unconscious mind is literally rewiring itself through play, building the neural architecture that will later allow you to adapt to new situations, solve novel problems, and think creatively. Here's where the story deepens. Your unconscious doesn't just process your own actions during play, it's constantly reading and predicting the actions of others. When you play a game with another person, a remarkable system called mirror neurons activates in your brain. These neurons fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that same action. Your unconscious mind is essentially simulating their experience inside your own neural networks. This is how children learn the unspoken rules of social interaction through play, how they develop empathy without formal instruction. Every game of peekaboo, every shared laugh, every moment of cooperative play is training your unconscious to understand and predict human behavior. The unconscious mind also maintains what researchers call a play frame, a mental boundary that separates play from reality. This is more sophisticated than it might seem. Your brain must simultaneously know that the play fight isn't real while treating it as if it were real enough to learn from. It must believe in the game while knowing it's just a game. This dual awareness exists almost entirely at the unconscious level. You don't consciously remind yourself that this is just pretend every few seconds. Your unconscious handles that delicate balance automatically, allowing you to be fully immersed while remaining safely anchored to reality. And here's something that might surprise you. Your unconscious mind uses play to process difficult emotions and experiences, often without your conscious awareness. Therapists have long observed that children who've experienced trauma will often reenact elements of that experience in their play, but with one crucial difference: in the play version, they're in control. A child who felt helpless during a frightening event might create a game where they're the powerful hero. The unconscious mind is quite literally rewriting the emotional script, creating new neural pathways that offer a sense of mastery and agency. This isn't just true for children. Adults who engage in play, whether through sports, games, or creative activities, are allowing their unconscious to process and integrate experiences in this same transformative way. Finally, as we close this first chapter of our journey, consider this: your unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between important and trivial activities in the way your conscious mind does. When you play, your unconscious treats it with perfect seriousness, devoting the same neural resources it would to survival itself. Because, in a sense, play is survival. Every moment of play is a moment of learning, of adaptation, of becoming more capable of navigating the complex world around you. Your unconscious knows something your conscious mind often forgets: that play isn't a break from the real work of living, it's one of the most essential forms that work takes. Rest now in this knowledge. Your unconscious mind has been guiding you through play since your first moments in this world, and it continues its gentle work even now, as you drift towards sleep. As you settle deeper into comfort, let's continue our exploration of the hidden landscapes of play, where your unconscious mind has been working in silence all along. We begin this chapter with a curious phenomenon. When you watch someone else play, a child spinning in circles, athletes moving across a field, even a pet chasing a ball, specific regions of your unconscious mind activate as if you were playing yourself. Neuroscientists call this embodied simulation, and it reveals something profound about how deeply play is woven into our social fabric. Your unconscious doesn't just observe, it participates. It's running invisible rehearsals, building templates of movement and joy that can be drawn upon later. This is why watching play can sometimes feel almost as satisfying as playing itself. Your unconscious mind is drinking in the experience, cataloging it, making it part of your own repertoire of possibilities. But there's something even more subtle happening beneath the surface. Your unconscious mind tracks patterns during play with extraordinary precision, patterns you could never consciously articulate. When a child plays the same game repeatedly, rolling a ball down a ramp over and over, or singing the same song while jumping, they're not being merely repetitive. Their unconscious is conducting experiments, testing variables, building predictive models of how the world works. Each repetition adds nuance to an internal simulation. The unconscious mind is asking, what happens if I push harder? What if I jump at a different moment? It's building a physics engine of reality, one play session at a time, creating intuitive knowledge that will later emerge as gut feelings and automatic competencies. Here's where our story takes an interesting turn into the realm of emotions. During play, your unconscious mind practices what psychologists call affect regulation, the ability to manage and modulate your emotional states. Think of children playing a game that becomes frustrating. They feel anger rising, but something remarkable happens: they don't simply explode or quit. Instead, they often find ways to shift their emotional state. Maybe they change the rules, take a break, or laugh at their mistakes. Your unconscious is learning a crucial skill here. Emotions don't have to overwhelm you, they can be acknowledged, adjusted, and integrated. This emotional fluency developed through play becomes the foundation for adult resilience, though most people never realize that their ability to stay calm under pressure was first practiced in childhood games. The unconscious mind also uses play to establish what researchers call social scripts, invisible templates for how interactions should unfold. When children negotiate who gets to be it in a game of tag, or when adults discuss the rules before a board game, the unconscious is absorbing far more than just the specific rules. It's learning about fairness, about negotiation, about compromise, about when to assert yourself and when to yield. These scripts become so deeply embedded that they operate automatically in adulthood. You don't consciously think about taking turns in conversation or reading social cues during a meeting. Your unconscious is running programs it wrote during thousands of hours of play, adjusting your behavior in real time based on patterns it learned decades ago. There's also a fascinating temporal dimension to how the unconscious experiences play. Have you ever noticed how time seems to behave differently when you're deeply engaged in play? An hour can feel like minutes, or a few minutes can stretch into what feels like a small eternity. This isn't just subjective, your unconscious mind actually processes time differently during play. The normal mechanisms by which your brain tracks duration become less active, while the regions associated with immediate experience and flow states become dominant. Your unconscious is essentially saying, this moment is so rich with learning and experience that clock time doesn't matter. It's prioritizing depth of experience over linear progression, allowing you to extract maximum value from each playful moment. Now consider something that happens mostly outside conscious awareness. Your unconscious mind uses play to build and test your understanding of cause and effect. Every time you play, you're generating predictions about what will happen next. If I move this piece here, my opponent will respond in this way. If I throw the ball at this angle, it will land in that spot. If I make this joke, my friend will laugh. Most of these predictions happen too quickly for conscious thought. Your unconscious generates them, compares them to what actually happens, and updates its models accordingly. This is how you develop intuition, through thousands of these unconscious prediction and correction cycles during play. What feels like just knowing something is actually your unconscious presenting you with the refined product of countless playful experiments. The unconscious mind also maintains what we might call a play history, a vast repository of every playful moment you've ever experienced, though most of these memories are not consciously accessible. They exist as feelings, tendencies, preferences, and patterns. This is why certain types of play might feel naturally comfortable to you while others feel foreign. Your unconscious has been keeping score, noting what kinds of play brought joy, which brought stress, which led to connection, which led to isolation. It uses this hidden archive to guide your current choices, gently steering you toward experiences it predicts will be valuable and away from those it learned were harmful. You might consciously think you're choosing to play a certain game simply because it's fun, but your unconscious is drawing on a lifetime of data to inform that choice. Here's a particularly beautiful aspect of how play operates beneath conscious awareness. Your unconscious uses playful moments to test the boundaries between self and other. When you play collaboratively, building something together, creating a shared story, moving in sync during a dance or sport, your brain's normal boundaries of selfhood become more flexible. Neuroscientists have found that during cooperative play, the brain regions associated with distinguishing self from others show unusual patterns of activity. Your unconscious is exploring the possibility that the boundary between you and another person isn't as fixed as it normally seems. This temporary dissolution of boundaries is how empathy deepens, how intimacy forms, how communities cohere. Your unconscious is teaching you, through direct experience, that you are both separate and connected, a paradox that can only be learned through doing, not through thinking. And finally, before we move forward, consider this: your unconscious mind preserves what researchers call the ludic attitude, the capacity for playfulness, even when you're not actively playing. It remains in the background of your awareness, ready to emerge when conditions are right. This is why a playful comment can shift the entire atmosphere of a serious meeting, why a moment of humor can diffuse tension, why you can suddenly see a creative solution to a problem when you approach it playfully. Your unconscious maintains this capacity like a pilot light, never fully extinguished, always ready to reignite. It knows that playfulness isn't just an activity, it's a way of being, a lens through which the world can be experienced with curiosity rather than fear, with possibility rather than limitation. Rest in this knowing. Your unconscious holds all these patterns, all these learnings, gently working in the background as you drift deeper into sleep. As we journey deeper into the night, let's explore how your unconscious mind weaves play into the very fabric of who you are, shaping your identity in ways you've never consciously considered. Our story continues with a remarkable discovery. Your unconscious mind uses play to construct what psychologists call your possible selves, versions of who you might become. When a child pretends to be a doctor, a teacher, an astronaut, or a superhero, something profound is happening beneath the surface. The unconscious isn't just entertaining a fantasy, it's actually creating neural pathways associated with that identity. It's asking, what would it feel like to be this person? What would I do? How would I move through the world? These aren't idle questions. Research has shown that adults who engaged in rich imaginative play as children have more complex, flexible self-concepts. Your unconscious used those playful explorations to build a wider range of potential identities, giving you more options for who you could become. Even now, when you play, whether through role-playing games, amateur theater, or simply imagining different scenarios, your unconscious is still building and testing these possible selves, keeping your identity flexible and open to growth. But the unconscious does something even more subtle during play. It creates what neuroscientists call safety signals, markers that tell your nervous system, this is a space where you can take risks without real danger. These signals are often tied to specific cues, the sound of laughter, the presence of trusted others, physical spaces associated with play. Once your unconscious establishes these safety signals, they can influence your behavior for years to come. This is why certain environments, a park where you played as a child, the smell of a game room, even particular types of music, can suddenly make you feel more open, more creative, more willing to experiment. Your unconscious remembers where play happened before and uses those memories to create psychological safety in the present, even if you're not consciously aware of the connection. Now, let's turn to something that happens almost entirely outside conscious awareness. During play, your unconscious mind is constantly calibrating your sense of competence. Every time you attempt something in play, whether you succeed or fail, your unconscious updates its assessment of your capabilities. But here's what's fascinating. It doesn't just track whether you succeeded or failed. It tracks how you responded to success and failure. Did you persist after a setback? Did you become more cautious after success? Did you seek help when stuck? Your unconscious is building a meta-understanding, not just of what you can do, but of how you approach challenges. This meta-understanding becomes what we call self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to influence outcomes. Children who engage in challenging play, where they sometimes fail but keep trying, develop unconscious patterns of resilience that serve them throughout life. Their unconscious learned a fundamental lesson: difficulty is temporary, and effort changes outcomes. The unconscious mind also uses play to negotiate power and status, though this happens far beneath the surface of awareness. Watch any group of people playing together, children in a playground, adults in a sports league, colleagues in a team-building exercise, and you'll see constant, subtle negotiations about who leads, who follows, who makes decisions, who defers. Most of these negotiations happen without words, through gesture, timing, and implicit agreement. Your unconscious is reading these signals constantly, adjusting your behavior in response, finding your place in the social hierarchy. This isn't cynical or calculating, it's how social animals maintain group cohesion. Your unconscious knows that sustainable relationships require this kind of fluid, ongoing negotiation, and play provides a safe context to practice these delicate dances of power and connection. Here's something that reveals the deep intelligence of the unconscious. During play, your brain enters what researchers call a high plasticity state, a condition where new neural connections form more easily. Your unconscious essentially opens itself to learning, temporarily lowering some of the barriers that normally protect established patterns of thinking. This is why playing with new ideas, experimenting with unfamiliar activities, or engaging in novel forms of play can feel so cognitively refreshing. You're not just having fun, your unconscious is taking advantage of play's unique properties to rewire itself, to update its models, to integrate new information. The joy you feel during play isn't separate from this learning process, it's the signal your unconscious uses to say, yes, this is valuable. Keep doing this. Pleasure and growth are intertwined in the unconscious mind's approach to play. The unconscious also maintains what we might think of as a play vocabulary, a collection of moves, strategies, and responses that it learned through playful interaction and can now deploy automatically. When you respond to a joke with a witty comeback, when you instinctively know how to play along with someone's pretense, when you can shift smoothly from competition to cooperation, you're drawing on this vocabulary. You didn't memorize these responses consciously, your unconscious absorbed them through countless playful exchanges, noting what worked, what created connection, what generated delight. Now they emerge effortlessly, so smoothly integrated into your behavior that you might not even recognize them as learned skills. This is the unconscious at its most elegant, invisible competence, shaped by joy. There's also a profound relationship between play and the unconscious processing of identity, particularly in how you understand your role in various social contexts. When you play different roles, even in a simple board game where you're a merchant or a detective, your unconscious is experimenting with different aspects of your personality. It's asking, what if I were more assertive? What if I took more risks? What if I were more collaborative? These aren't just mental exercises. Neurologically, when you embody a different role during play, you temporarily activate neural networks associated with those traits. Your unconscious is essentially trying on different patterns of being, seeing how they fit, noting what feels authentic and what feels forced. Over time, this playful experimentation can actually expand your personality, making traits that once felt foreign become integrated parts of who you are. Consider also how the unconscious uses play to process social feedback. When something you do during play elicits laughter, approval, or engagement from others, your unconscious marks that behavior as socially valuable. When something you do creates awkwardness, silence, or withdrawal, your unconscious notes that too. But here's the sophisticated part: it doesn't just create simple rules like do more of this, less of that. It tracks context. It learns that humor that works with one group might fall flat with another, that competitiveness appreciated in one setting might be unwelcome in another. Your unconscious is building a complex, contextual understanding of social dynamics, using play as its laboratory. This is why socially skilled adults often have rich histories of play. Their unconscious had more opportunities to gather data, to refine its models, to learn the nuances of human interaction. And as this chapter of our journey comes to a close, reflect on this: your unconscious mind preserves every moment of genuine play as a kind of emotional touchstone, a reference point for what it feels like to be fully engaged, present, and alive. When you're stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed, your unconscious can draw on these memories, not as conscious recollections, but as felt senses, as possibilities for being. It reminds you, in ways too subtle for words, that there are other ways to exist besides constant vigilance and effort. The playful state is always available, always accessible, waiting in the depths of your unconscious mind like a shelter you can return to whenever the world becomes too heavy. Let that knowledge settle into you now, as you drift deeper into the peaceful darkness of sleep. As the night deepens around you, let's continue our gentle exploration of the hidden territories where play and the unconscious mind intertwine, revealing secrets about how you've learned to navigate the world. We begin this chapter with a fascinating paradox. Your unconscious mind uses play to explore the very boundaries of control itself. When you engage in play, you're simultaneously exercising control, making choices, directing action, pursuing goals, and surrendering control, accepting rules, responding to chance, flowing with unexpected developments. This paradox exists almost entirely at the unconscious level. You don't consciously think, now I will control this situation, now I will surrender to it. Instead, your unconscious orchestrates a delicate dance between agency and acceptance, teaching you one of life's most essential skills: knowing when to push and when to yield. Children who play games involving both skill and chance, rolling dice, drawing cards, navigating unpredictable outcomes, are allowing their unconscious to develop this crucial flexibility. The lesson sinks in without words: you cannot control everything, but you can control how you respond to what you cannot control. Your unconscious mind also uses play to build what psychologists call behavioral flexibility, the ability to shift strategies when circumstances change. Watch how people play a game they're losing. Some double down on their current approach, others experiment with new tactics, still others change their goal entirely, perhaps now playing for style rather than victory. Your unconscious is monitoring these moments closely, learning not just about strategy, but about your relationship with failure, change, and adaptation. It's building patterns that will emerge years later in entirely different contexts: how you respond when a project at work isn't going well, how you adjust when a relationship hits difficulties, how you pivot when life doesn't unfold as expected. The unconscious doesn't distinguish sharply between the trivial stakes of a game and the serious stakes of real life. It treats both as opportunities to refine its adaptive capacities. Here's something remarkable about how the unconscious processes rhythm and timing through play. Every form of play has its own temporal signature, its own rhythm, and your unconscious learns to attune to these rhythms with extraordinary precision. In turn-based games, you learn patience and the value of waiting for the right moment. In fast-paced play, you develop the ability to make decisions under pressure without conscious deliberation. In collaborative improvisation, you learn to sense when to speak and when to hold back, when to build on another's idea and when to redirect. These temporal skills, this sense of timing, become embedded in your unconscious and influence everything you do. The ability to know when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen, when to persist and when to change course, these don't come from conscious rules but from thousands of hours of playful practice that your unconscious has distilled into intuitive wisdom. The unconscious mind also creates what we might call play memories that are stored differently from ordinary memories. When you recall a moment of genuine play, it often comes with a distinctive quality, a sense of aliveness, of presence, of wholeness. Neuroscientists have found that memories formed during play engage multiple brain systems simultaneously: the emotional centers, the motor systems, the social cognition networks, the sensory processing areas. Your unconscious is essentially creating rich, multidimensional recordings that preserve not just what happened, but how it felt to be fully immersed in that moment. Later in life, when you need to access creativity, confidence, or courage, your unconscious can draw on these play memories as templates, reactivating the neural patterns associated with those states of complete engagement. You might not consciously remember the specific game you played at age 7, but your unconscious can still access the feeling of capability and joy it produced. Now consider something subtle about how play shapes your relationship with rules and structure. Through play, your unconscious learns that rules are not absolute, rigid constraints imposed from outside, but rather flexible agreements that make certain experiences possible. Children who negotiate and modify rules during play, let's say you get 3 chances instead of 1, are developing an unconscious understanding that rules serve experience, not the other way around. This understanding becomes foundational to moral reasoning, to creative problem solving, to leadership. Your unconscious learns that you can respect structure while also recognizing when structure needs to evolve. The unconscious also uses play to explore and integrate aspects of your shadow self, those parts of your personality that you typically keep hidden or suppressed. In play, you might allow yourself to be silly when you're usually serious, competitive when you're usually accommodating, vulnerable when you're usually defended. The beauty of play is that it creates a protected space where these hidden aspects can emerge without lasting consequences. Your unconscious is conducting a kind of personality inventory, discovering the full range of who you are. Research in depth psychology suggests that people who play regularly, who allow themselves these temporary excursions into different ways of being, tend to have more integrated personalities. Their unconscious has had permission to explore the full spectrum of human experience, rather than being locked into narrow, habitual patterns. Here's something fascinating about how the unconscious processes uncertainty through play. Every game, every form of play, involves some degree of unpredictability. You don't know if you'll win, if the ball will bounce your way, if your creative experiment will succeed, if your playful comment will land well. Your unconscious is using these moments of uncertainty to calibrate your relationship with the unknown. It's learning, how much uncertainty can you tolerate while still remaining engaged? What level of unpredictability is exciting versus overwhelming? How do you respond when outcomes are beyond your control? This unconscious learning about uncertainty extends far beyond play itself. It shapes your relationship with risk, your willingness to try new things, your ability to stay present in situations where you don't know what will happen next. People who avoid play often become increasingly rigid and anxiety-prone, because their unconscious never gets to practice dancing with uncertainty in a safe context. The unconscious mind also tracks what researchers call play deficits, the cost of not playing. When you go too long without play, your unconscious registers this as a form of deprivation, similar to missing sleep or going without meaningful social connection. You might not consciously feel "I need to play," but your unconscious responds to the deficit nonetheless. You might become more irritable, less creative, more rigid in your thinking, less able to regulate stress. Your unconscious knows that play isn't optional, that it serves essential psychological functions. This is why the impulse to play, to make a joke, to try something new, to approach a situation playfully, often emerges spontaneously after periods of stress or seriousness. Your unconscious is asserting itself, insisting on the restoration of balance, reminding you that you need play to be fully human. And as we close this part of our journey together, consider this profound truth: your unconscious doesn't need to be convinced of the value of play through logical arguments or scientific evidence. It already knows, with a certainty deeper than thought, that play is essential. Every mammalian brain carries this ancient wisdom. Your unconscious will continue to seek out play, to create opportunities for play, to recognize and respond to invitations to play, regardless of what your conscious mind might tell you about being too old or too busy or too serious. The unconscious is patient but persistent, always guiding you back toward wholeness, always reminding you that growth and joy are inseparable, always inviting you to remember who you were before the world taught you to forget. Rest now in this deep knowing, as sleep embraces you more fully. As you sink deeper into the quiet comfort of this moment, let us continue our exploration of how play whispers to the unconscious, teaching lessons that could never be learned through words alone. We begin with a curious observation about presence. When you are truly playing, your unconscious mind achieves something that meditation teachers spend years helping people cultivate: complete absorption in the present moment. During genuine play, you're not ruminating about the past or worrying about the future. Your unconscious has temporarily suspended its constant background monitoring of threats and obligations, allowing you to exist fully in the now. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain during deep play shows remarkable similarities to the brain during meditation or flow states. The default mode network, which generates self-referential thoughts and mind-wandering, becomes quieter. Your unconscious is giving you a gift: temporary freedom from the endless narrative of selfhood, a chance to simply be rather than constantly becoming. This capacity for presence, first learned through play, remains available to you throughout life, waiting to be activated whenever you allow yourself to play again. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore the concept of reversibility, the idea that actions can be undone, that mistakes can be corrected, that nothing is permanent. When a child knocks down a tower of blocks and immediately starts rebuilding, or when players reset a game and start over, something important is being learned beneath conscious awareness. The unconscious is discovering that failure isn't final, that endings can become beginnings, that you can always try again. This stands in stark contrast to much of real life, where many actions carry lasting consequences. Play creates a protected space where your unconscious can experiment with the liberating possibility that nothing is irreversible, building psychological flexibility and hope. Adults who maintain this sense of reversibility, who can restart, reimagine, and try different approaches, are often those who kept alive their capacity for play. Their unconscious never forgot the lesson that the game can always begin again. Here's something subtle about how the unconscious processes belonging through play. When you play with others, especially in cooperative or team-based activities, your unconscious is constantly monitoring signals of inclusion and exclusion. Am I wanted here? Do I contribute value? Do others respond positively to me? But it's doing more than just tracking your social standing, it's also learning how to help others feel included. When you pass the ball to someone who hasn't had a turn, when you adjust the rules to accommodate different skill levels, when you celebrate another player's success, your unconscious is building what researchers call prosocial tendencies. These aren't conscious moral decisions in the moment, they're automatic responses shaped by countless playful interactions. Your unconscious has learned that play is better when everyone feels they belong, and it guides your behavior accordingly, not just during play but in all social contexts. The capacity to create inclusive spaces, to help others feel valued, these often trace back to lessons the unconscious learned through play. The unconscious also develops what we might call playful attention, a specific quality of awareness that's neither focused nor scattered, but rather openly receptive to whatever emerges. When you play, especially in improvisational or creative forms of play, you can't plan everything in advance. You have to respond to what happens. Your unconscious learns to maintain a state of relaxed alertness, ready to notice opportunities, to respond to surprises, to build on unexpected developments. This playful attention is fundamentally different from the narrow, goal-directed attention used for analytical tasks or the vigilant, threat-scanning attention used when you feel unsafe. It's open, curious, receptive, what contemplative traditions might call beginner's mind. People who maintain access to playful attention throughout adulthood often demonstrate remarkable creativity and adaptability, because their unconscious learned early how to be simultaneously relaxed and responsive, simultaneously present and spontaneous. Now let's explore how play teaches the unconscious about transformation and identity fluidity. When you engage in pretend play or role-playing, something remarkable happens. You temporarily experience the world from a different perspective. A child playing house might be the parent, then the baby, then the family pet, experiencing each viewpoint from the inside. Your unconscious is learning something profound here, that identity is not fixed, that you can inhabit different perspectives, that the boundaries of self are more permeable than they seem. This capacity for perspective-taking, first developed through play, becomes the foundation for empathy, for imagination, for the ability to understand experiences different from your own. Adults who struggle with rigid, defensive identities often have limited histories of imaginative play. Their unconscious never got sufficient practice with the idea that you can be one thing and then become another, that transformation is possible, that who you are today doesn't constrain who you might be tomorrow. The unconscious mind also uses play to develop what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to distinguish between subtle shades of feeling. During play, you experience a rich palette of emotions, often in rapid succession: excitement, disappointment, pride, frustration, joy, surprise, anticipation, relief. But unlike emotions experienced during trauma or crisis, these play emotions occur in a context of safety, allowing your unconscious to study them carefully, to learn their contours and qualities. A child who experiences the disappointment of losing a game, the frustration of a puzzle that won't solve, the pride of mastering a new skill, these experiences are teaching the unconscious to map the emotional landscape with precision. Later in life, this emotional granularity allows you to communicate feelings with nuance, to understand what you're experiencing, to respond to emotions appropriately rather than being overwhelmed by them. The unconscious learned its emotional vocabulary through play. Here's something fascinating about how play influences the unconscious processing of fairness and justice. Games and play activities are often structured around ideas of equity, taking turns, following the same rules, having equal opportunities. When children insist that play must be fair, they're not just being difficult, their unconscious is grappling with fundamental concepts of justice and reciprocity. But the unconscious learns something more sophisticated than simple equality. It learns about situational fairness, that sometimes you give a younger child an advantage so the game remains enjoyable, that sometimes different people need different accommodations, that fairness isn't always about sameness. These nuanced understandings of justice and equity, first explored through play, become the foundation for moral reasoning. Your unconscious carries these early lessons into adulthood, where they inform how you think about fairness in relationships, in work, in society. The seeds of conscience were planted in playgrounds and game boards, in moments when your unconscious wrestled with what was right. The unconscious also maintains what we could call play partnerships, deep associations between specific people and the quality of play you experienced with them. Perhaps there's someone from your childhood with whom play was especially joyful, creative, or safe. Even if you haven't seen them in decades, your unconscious preserves that association. When you encounter someone who reminds you of that early play partner, perhaps they have a similar energy, a similar way of laughing, a similar openness, your unconscious may automatically respond with warmth and trust, drawing on that stored template of positive play experience. Conversely, if early play experiences with certain types of people were negative, your unconscious may generate subtle wariness when you encounter similar individuals. You're not consciously thinking, "This person reminds me of someone I played with in third grade," but your unconscious is making these connections, using your play history to navigate present relationships. And as this segment draws to a close, rest in this understanding: your unconscious mind holds within it every moment of play you've ever experienced, not as separate memories but as woven threads in the larger tapestry of who you are. Each game, each laugh, each moment of creative abandon has left its mark on the intricate neural architecture that guides your behavior, your choices, your way of being in the world. These aren't just nostalgic memories, they're active, living patterns that continue to shape how you perceive, feel, and act. The child who played is not gone but lives on in the depths of your unconscious, still capable of wonder, still ready for delight, still knowing how to transform the ordinary into the magical. Let that truth settle gently over you as you drift deeper into sleep's embrace. As you rest more deeply now, let us wander further into the silent territories where your unconscious mind has been learning through play, building wisdom that exists beyond the reach of conscious thought. Our journey continues with a profound realization. Your unconscious mind uses play to explore the delicate boundary between chaos and order, between structure and freedom. Every form of play exists somewhere on this spectrum. Some games have rigid rules and clear boundaries, others are almost entirely freeform and improvisational. Your unconscious is learning to navigate this continuum, discovering that too much structure becomes stifling, while too much chaos becomes overwhelming. The sweet spot is different for each person, and your unconscious has been calibrating your personal preference through every playful experience. This learning extends far beyond play itself. Your comfort with ambiguity, your need for routine, your tolerance for spontaneity, these are all influenced by what your unconscious discovered about yourself during play. Some people learn that they thrive in the creative chaos of make-believe, others found peace in the clear rules of structured games. Neither is right or wrong, both are truths the unconscious discovered about what helps you feel alive and engaged. The unconscious also uses play to develop what neuroscientists call predictive processing, the brain's constant effort to anticipate what will happen next. During play, especially interactive play with others, your unconscious is generating thousands of micro-predictions every moment. If I throw this ball, where will it go? If I make this move, how will my opponent respond? If I say this playful thing, will my friend laugh? Each prediction is tested against reality, and the unconscious updates its models accordingly, becoming more accurate over time. This is how you develop what seems like intuition. You can sense how a situation will unfold because your unconscious has processed millions of similar patterns during play. The poker player who can read an opponent's tells, the comedian who knows exactly when to deliver a punchline, the athlete who anticipates the next play, they're all drawing on prediction engines their unconscious refined through countless hours of playful practice. Here's something beautiful about how the unconscious processes generosity through play. When you share toys, take turns, or help another player during a game, your unconscious is discovering something counterintuitive, that giving can feel as good as receiving. Neuroimaging studies have shown that acts of generosity during play activate the brain's reward centers, the same regions involved in processing personal pleasure. Your unconscious is learning that your well-being and others' well-being are not in opposition but are often aligned. A child who experiences the joy of making a playmate laugh, of helping someone succeed, of creating something together, is building unconscious patterns of generosity that will influence behavior for a lifetime. These aren't lessons about what you should do, they're discoveries about what actually feels good, what creates connection, what makes the game better for everyone. The unconscious carries these discoveries forward, gently nudging you toward generosity not from obligation but from the remembered pleasure of shared joy. The unconscious mind also develops through play what we might call failure literacy, a sophisticated understanding of what failure means and how to respond to it. Every game involves the possibility of not succeeding, of making mistakes, of things not going as planned. Your unconscious is carefully observing your relationship with these moments. Do you collapse into shame? Do you become angry? Do you laugh it off? Do you analyze what went wrong? Do you immediately try again? The unconscious isn't judging these responses, it's learning which patterns help you recover and which keep you stuck. Children who play games with appropriate levels of challenge, difficult enough to sometimes fail, but not so difficult as to be hopeless, develop unconscious resilience. Their unconscious learn that failure is temporary feedback, not a verdict on their worth. This learning becomes particularly crucial in adulthood, where the stakes feel higher and the consequences more serious. But deep in the unconscious, the patterns established during play remain. Failure is just part of the game, and the game continues. Now consider how the unconscious uses play to explore authenticity and performance. When you play, there's always a question of how much you're being yourself versus playing a role. In some forms of play, you inhabit a character completely different from your everyday self. In others, you're simply a more energized, spontaneous version of who you usually are. Your unconscious is exploring the relationship between these different presentations of self. It's discovering that you contain multitudes, that you can be authentic while also performing, that there's no single true self but rather a constellation of selves that emerge in different contexts. This understanding, developed through play, becomes the foundation for psychological flexibility. Adults who can adapt their presentation to different situations without feeling fraudulent often have rich play histories. Their unconscious learned early that you can fully inhabit a role while also remaining yourself, that transformation and authenticity aren't opposites but can coexist beautifully. The unconscious also tracks what researchers call optimal challenge, the level of difficulty that produces the deepest engagement and learning. During play, your unconscious is constantly monitoring, is this too easy? Is it too hard? Is it just right? When you find that sweet spot, where you're challenged but not overwhelmed, where success is possible but not guaranteed, your unconscious generates a distinctive signal, the state of flow, of complete absorption. Over time, your unconscious learns to recognize this state and to seek it out. It guides you toward activities and experiences that offer optimal challenge, steering you away from those that are either too simple or impossibly difficult. This unconscious guidance system, calibrated through play, influences everything from career choices to hobbies to relationships. You might consciously think you're choosing something because it interests you, but often your unconscious is recognizing the signature of optimal challenge, the promise of that absorbed, energized state you first discovered during childhood play. Here's something subtle about how play shapes the unconscious understanding of time and patience. Different forms of play teach different temporal skills. Strategic games teach the value of long-term planning, of sacrificing immediate advantage for future gain. Physical play teaches split-second timing and quick reactions. Creative play teaches the patience required to bring something into being gradually. Your unconscious absorbs these different temporal modes, learning that time can be used in various ways depending on the context. This temporal flexibility becomes essential in adult life, where you must sometimes act quickly and sometimes wait patiently, sometimes focus on immediate needs and sometimes on distant goals. People who struggle with time management or who feel constantly rushed often have limited experience with forms of play that taught patient, long-term engagement. Their unconscious never developed a comfortable relationship with slower temporal rhythms, with the idea that some worthwhile things take time to unfold. The unconscious mind also uses play to process and integrate paradoxes, contradictions that seem logically impossible but are experientially true. During play, you simultaneously care deeply about winning and recognize that it's just a game. You know the monster isn't real but feel genuine fear. You're entirely yourself yet also playing a role. These paradoxes can't be resolved intellectually, they can only be lived. Your unconscious becomes comfortable holding these contradictions, learning that reality is more complex than simple either-or categories. This comfort with paradox, first developed through play, becomes essential for navigating the ambiguities of adult life, understanding that you can love someone and be angry with them, that you can be confident and uncertain, that you can take something seriously while also holding it lightly. The unconscious learn through play that contradictions don't need to be resolved, they can simply be experienced. And as we prepare to continue our journey, let this understanding wash over you. Your unconscious has been your faithful companion through every moment of play, quietly learning, constantly adapting, building the invisible architecture that supports your conscious life. It asks nothing in return except the opportunity to continue this essential work, this sacred task of helping you grow through joy. Even now, as you rest, your unconscious is processing, integrating, preparing you for tomorrow's adventures. It never stops, never sleeps, never abandons its patient work of making you more whole, more capable, more alive. Trust in this deeper intelligence as you surrender more completely to sleep. As the night deepens and you drift further into rest, let us explore how your unconscious mind uses play to weave the invisible threads that connect you to others, building the foundation for every meaningful relationship you'll ever have. We begin this chapter with a discovery about attunement. When you play with another person, your unconscious minds enter into a kind of silent conversation, a dance of mutual adjustment that happens far too quickly for conscious thought. If you've ever played catch with someone, you know this experience. You don't consciously calculate the arc and velocity needed for each throw. Your unconscious reads your partner's position, anticipates their movement, and adjusts your throw automatically. But something more profound is happening here. Your unconscious is also reading emotional signals, noticing when your partner seems tired, when they're losing interest, when they're fully engaged. It adjusts not just the physical game but the emotional tone, the pacing, the level of challenge. This capacity for attunement, first developed through play, becomes the foundation for all intimate relationships. The ability to sense what another person needs, to adjust your behavior to match their state, to find a rhythm together, these skills were learned when your unconscious was young and open, practicing connection through the medium of play. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore the concept of shared reality, the experience of inhabiting the same imagined world as another person. When two children agree that a stick is a sword or that the couch is a ship sailing through dangerous waters, something remarkable occurs. Their unconscious minds are coordinating to create and maintain a shared fiction, each one monitoring the other's commitment to the pretense, each one contributing to sustaining the illusion. This is extraordinarily sophisticated cognitive work, requiring what psychologists call joint attention and shared intentionality. Your unconscious learns through these experiences that reality isn't just what exists objectively but also what we agree to create together. This understanding becomes essential for participating in culture, in relationships, in any collective endeavor. Every conversation, every collaboration, every community depends on this ability to create shared meaning, an ability your unconscious first practiced during make-believe play, when dragons were real because everyone agreed they were. Here's something profound about how the unconscious processes vulnerability through play. Play often requires you to expose yourself to judgment, to reveal your abilities or lack thereof, to take social risks. When you try a new game, when you attempt something difficult in front of others, when you make a playful joke that might not land, you're making yourself vulnerable. Your unconscious is closely monitoring what happens in these moments of exposure. Are you accepted anyway? Do people respond with kindness or cruelty? Is it safe to be imperfect here? The answers to these questions, accumulated across hundreds of playful interactions, shape your unconscious beliefs about vulnerability itself. Children who play in environments where mistakes are met with encouragement rather than ridicule develop unconscious associations between vulnerability and safety. Their deeper self learn that you can be imperfect and still belong, that taking risks is worth the temporary discomfort. This lesson, or its absence, profoundly influences adult relationships, determining whether you can show your true self to others or must maintain a careful facade. The unconscious also develops what we might call cooperative intelligence, the ability to coordinate with others toward shared goals. During cooperative play, whether you're building something together, playing on a team, or creating a shared story, your unconscious is learning incredibly complex skills of collaboration. It learns to monitor not just your own progress but the group's collective progress. It learns to notice when someone needs help, when to lead and when to follow, how to negotiate disagreements without destroying the shared endeavor. These lessons happen mostly beneath conscious awareness, encoded as feelings and intuitions rather than explicit rules. An adult who works well in teams, who can navigate group dynamics gracefully, is often drawing on cooperative patterns their unconscious established during childhood play. The unconscious learn that collective success often requires temporarily setting aside personal glory, that supporting others' contributions strengthens the whole, that we can sometimes be more powerful than I. Now let's explore how play teaches the unconscious about boundaries, both setting them and respecting them. Every form of play has boundaries, physical boundaries like the edges of a playing field, social boundaries like taking turns, personal boundaries like don't touch me like that. Your unconscious learns about boundaries by encountering them, by testing them, by experiencing the consequences when they're crossed. A child who pushes too hard during roughhousing and sees their playmates' face change learns that there are limits to acceptable behavior. A child whose boundaries are respected during play learns that they have the right to say no, that their comfort matters. These unconscious lessons about boundaries become templates for adult relationships. People who struggle with boundaries as adults, who can't say no, who regularly overstep others' limits, who feel confused about what's appropriate, often have play histories where boundaries were either rigidly enforced or completely absent. Their unconscious never got to practice the nuanced dance of mutual respect that healthy boundaries require. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore power dynamics in relationships. During play, power constantly shifts. Now you're winning, now I am, now you're the leader, now I follow, now you set the rules, now I get input. Your unconscious is learning that power doesn't have to be fixed or absolute, that relationships can involve fluid exchanges of influence and control. Children who play games where everyone gets to be in charge sometimes develop unconscious comfort with shared power. Those who only experience rigid hierarchies during play may struggle with egalitarian relationships later, either always needing to be dominant or always defaulting to submission. The unconscious carries forward these early lessons about whether power is something to hoard or something to share, whether influence is zero-sum or can be mutually enhancing. These patterns, established during play, quietly shape everything from workplace dynamics to intimate partnerships. Here's something beautiful about how the unconscious processes repair through play. Disagreements and ruptures happen constantly during play. Someone breaks a rule, someone gets hurt feelings, someone feels excluded. But play also offers constant opportunities for repair, apologizing, adjusting the rules, including someone who was left out, starting over. Your unconscious is learning that relationships can break and mend, that conflict doesn't mean connection is lost forever, that repair is possible. Research suggests that the capacity for relationship repair in adulthood is strongly predicted by playful repair experiences in childhood. When your unconscious learned that you could rupture and reconnect, fail and be forgiven, hurt and make amends, it developed a fundamental optimism about relationships. This unconscious optimism allows adults to weather conflict, to believe that problems can be solved, to stay engaged rather than fleeing at the first sign of difficulty. The unconscious also tracks what researchers call play reciprocity, the unspoken exchange of give and take in playful interactions. When you play with someone who always wins, who never shares the spotlight, who makes the game all about them, your unconscious notices. It learns what selfish play feels like, what inequality feels like, what it's like when someone doesn't hold up their end of the social contract. Conversely, when you play with someone generous, someone who makes sure everyone has fun, someone who celebrates others' successes, your unconscious learns what healthy reciprocity feels like. These unconscious benchmarks influence your later choices about relationships. You might not consciously think, this person reminds me of that selfish playmate from childhood, but your unconscious is making exactly that comparison, using your play history as a reference library for evaluating current relationships. And as this chapter comes to rest, understand this: every person you've ever played with has left a trace in your unconscious mind, not as discrete memories but as patterns, as templates, as learned truths about what connection can be. Some taught you that play is joyful, others that it's competitive or cruel. Some showed you that others can be trusted, others that you must always guard yourself. But here's the remarkable thing: your unconscious isn't trapped by these early patterns. It remains open to new experiences, new people, new forms of play that can update and revise these old templates. The unconscious is conservative, yes, but not rigid. It continues learning, continues adapting, continues seeking out experiences that help you grow. Even now, even here, as you rest in the darkness, your unconscious is preparing you for tomorrow's connections, for new opportunities to play, to relate, to discover that relationship is itself a form of play, serious and sacred, but also joyful, creative, and endlessly renewing. Rest deeply in this knowledge as sleep holds you closer still. As you settle into the deepest layers of rest, let us journey now into the ways your unconscious mind uses play to construct meaning, to make sense of a world that often seems senseless, to create order from chaos and beauty from the ordinary. We begin with a fundamental insight: your unconscious mind is a natural storyteller, and play is one of its primary vehicles for narrative exploration. When a child plays with dolls or action figures, they're not just moving objects around, they're creating stories with beginnings, middles, and ends, with conflicts and resolutions, with characters who want things and face obstacles. Your unconscious is learning the grammar of narrative, the deep structures that make stories meaningful. But more than that, it's experimenting with different story patterns, trying on different narrative arcs to see how they feel. The hero's journey, the comedy of errors, the tragedy, the redemption story. Your unconscious encounters these patterns first through play, long before you could name them consciously. This narrative sense becomes the lens through which you understand your own life. The stories you tell yourself about who you are, where you've been, where you're going, these draw on narrative templates your unconscious absorbed during countless hours of pretend play. The unconscious also uses play to explore the concept of meaning itself, what matters and what doesn't, what's worth caring about and what's trivial. During play, you invest tremendous emotional energy in outcomes that, from an external perspective, have no real consequences. Missing a goal, losing a game piece, failing to solve a puzzle, these can feel devastating in the moment, even though nothing real is at stake. Your unconscious is learning something profound. Meaning isn't determined by objective importance but by subjective investment. What matters is what you care about, what you've chosen to make significant. This understanding, first developed through play, becomes essential for living a meaningful adult life. The ability to care deeply about your work, your relationships, your creative projects, even knowing that from a cosmic perspective they may not matter, this capacity was nurtured during play, when you learn that significance is something you create through attention and commitment, not something inherent in the world. Here's something remarkable about how the unconscious processes mastery through play. Every form of play offers opportunities for getting better at something, for developing competence, for experiencing the satisfaction of improvement. When you practice a skill during play, whether throwing a ball more accurately, solving puzzles more quickly, or improvising stories more creatively, your unconscious is tracking your progress with remarkable precision. It notices the small improvements that your conscious mind might miss, and it generates feelings of satisfaction and accomplishment that motivate continued practice. But the unconscious is learning something beyond the specific skill. It's discovering that competence isn't fixed, that effort leads to improvement, that you can transform from someone who can't do something into someone who can. This meta lesson about learning itself, absorbed through playful practice, becomes what psychologists call a growth mindset, the unconscious belief that abilities can be developed. Adults who maintain this belief often have rich histories of challenging play, where their unconscious repeatedly experienced the satisfying arc from struggle to mastery. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore symbolic thinking, the ability to recognize that one thing can stand for another thing. A block becomes a car, a sound becomes a dinosaur's roar, a gesture becomes an entire dramatic scene. This symbolic capacity, first developed through play, is foundational to almost every higher cognitive function. Language itself is a symbolic system, as is mathematics, as is art. Your unconscious learned to manipulate symbols through play long before you studied grammar or algebra. When a child moves a toy car while making engine noises, their unconscious is coordinating multiple symbolic systems. The physical object represents a real car, the sound represents the engine, the movement represents travel. This is extraordinarily sophisticated work, accomplished so naturally through play that it seems effortless. The ease with which you now use metaphors, understand abstract concepts, and engage with art and literature, all of this rests on symbolic foundations your unconscious established during early play. Now consider how play teaches the unconscious about emergence, the way complex, beautiful patterns can arise from simple interactions. When you build with blocks, you're stacking simple shapes according to basic physical principles, yet somehow a tower emerges, a castle, a bridge, something greater than the sum of its parts. When you improvise music with others, individual notes combine to create harmonies and melodies that none of you planned. Your unconscious is learning that wholeness emerges from parts, that systems create properties that individual elements don't possess, that the magic often lies in the relationships between things rather than in the things themselves. This understanding of emergence, intuited through play, shapes how you approach complex problems in adult life. People who can see how small changes might create large effects, who understand that systems have their own logic, who can work with emergence rather than trying to control every detail, they're often drawing on lessons their unconscious learned through open-ended, creative play. The unconscious also develops through play what we might call aesthetic sensitivity, the ability to recognize and create beauty, harmony, and elegance. When a child carefully arranges their toys, when they create patterns in the sandbox, when they experiment with different combinations of movements or sounds, something more than mere play is happening. The unconscious is developing taste, learning to distinguish between arrangements that feel satisfying and those that feel off, building an internal sense of what works and what doesn't. This aesthetic education happens entirely through direct experience, through trial and error, through the felt sense of rightness or wrongness. You can't teach someone to have good aesthetic judgment through rules or instructions. They must develop it through countless small experiments, through play. Adults with refined aesthetic sensibilities, whether in design, music, movement, or any creative domain, typically have unconscious foundations built through extensive childhood play where beauty and elegance were valued and explored. Here's something profound about how the unconscious processes limitation and constraint through play. Every game has rules, every play scenario has boundaries, every creative project has limits. Your unconscious is learning that constraints aren't just restrictions, they're often what makes play possible in the first place. Without rules, there's no game. Without boundaries, there's no meaningful choice. Without limits, there's no creativity. The unconscious discovers that total freedom can actually be paralyzing, while well-designed constraints can be liberating. Children who play within clear, reasonable boundaries often develop into adults who can work productively within constraints, who understand that limitations can enhance rather than diminish creativity. This stands in contrast to those who experienced either too many rigid restrictions or too few boundaries during play. Their unconscious never developed a comfortable relationship with constraint, either rebelling against all limits or feeling lost without detailed structure. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore the relationship between intention and outcome, between what you mean to do and what actually happens. During play, there's constant slippage between plan and reality. The tower you're building falls unexpectedly, the story you're telling takes an unplanned turn, your body doesn't move quite the way you intended. Your unconscious is learning to navigate this gap, discovering how to adjust your intentions in response to reality's feedback. But it's also learning something more subtle, that sometimes the unplanned outcomes are better than what you intended, that accidents can be opportunities, that you can incorporate the unexpected rather than fighting against it. Adults who demonstrate flexibility and improvisation, who can turn mistakes into innovations, are often drawing on unconscious patterns established during play, patterns that taught them to dance with uncertainty rather than demanding that reality conform to their plans. And as we complete this chapter of our nocturnal journey, rest in this truth: your unconscious mind has used play to build an internal model of how meaning is created, how beauty emerges, how mastery develops, how symbols connect. This model is vast and intricate, containing thousands of micro-lessons absorbed through direct experience. It operates beneath your awareness, guiding your judgments, shaping your responses, helping you navigate a complex world. You don't consciously access this model, you simply are it. The person you've become is inseparable from the play you engaged in, the patterns you discovered, the truths you absorbed through thousands of hours of joyful exploration. Your unconscious carries all of this forward, a faithful guardian of everything you've learned through play, a wellspring of wisdom you can draw upon whenever you need to create, to adapt, to find meaning in the chaos of existence. Let sleep deepen now, as your unconscious continues its patient, eternal work. As you drift through the quiet waters of deep rest, let us explore now how your unconscious mind uses play to understand the nature of reality itself, to discover what is possible and what is not, to learn the laws that govern the world while also learning when those laws can be bent. We begin with a curious observation about experimentation. When a young child drops a spoon from a high chair again and again, watching it fall each time, adults often assume the child is simply being difficult. But your unconscious knows better. It recognizes this as serious scientific investigation. The child is testing the law of gravity, confirming that objects fall consistently, exploring cause and effect. Every form of play is, at its core, a form of experimentation. Your unconscious uses play to build what psychologists call a naive physics, an intuitive understanding of how the physical world works. You don't need to study equations to know that heavier objects are harder to throw, that round things roll, that water flows downward. Your unconscious absorbed these truths through thousands of playful experiments, each one adding another piece to your internal model of physical reality. This intuitive physics, established through play, allows you to navigate the world with remarkable competence, making hundreds of accurate physical predictions every day without conscious thought. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore the boundaries between what is and what could be, between reality and possibility. When you engage in imaginative play, you're not confused about what's real. You know the dragon isn't actually there. But your unconscious is doing something sophisticated. It's practicing counterfactual thinking, the ability to imagine alternatives to reality. What if I could fly? What if I were someone else? What if the world worked differently? This capacity to think in possibilities rather than just actualities becomes foundational to planning, to creativity, to moral reasoning. Every time you consider what might happen if, every time you imagine a better solution, every time you empathize by imagining another's perspective, you're using cognitive tools your unconscious first developed during pretend play. The boundary between real and imaginary, first explored through play, remains permeable throughout life, not because you're confused, but because you learn that imagination is a powerful tool for understanding and transforming reality. Here's something profound about how the unconscious processes agency through play. Every moment of play is an experiment in causation, in discovering what you can influence and what lies beyond your control. When you push a toy and it moves, your unconscious learns, I can make things happen. When you call out to a playmate and they respond, your unconscious learns, I can affect others through communication. When you try to change the weather by wishing and nothing happens, your unconscious learns, some things are beyond my influence. These lessons accumulate into what psychologists call your locus of control, your sense of how much influence you have over your life. Children who engage in diverse forms of play, encountering both successes and failures, develop nuanced understanding. They learn they have real power in some domains while accepting their limits in others. Their unconscious calibrated itself through experience, discovering the realistic scope of human agency. This unconscious understanding profoundly influences adult behavior, whether you take action or feel helpless, whether you persist or give up, whether you see yourself as an agent or a victim of circumstance. The unconscious also develops through play what we might call material intelligence, an intuitive understanding of how different materials and substances behave. When you play with water, sand, clay, fabric, wood, you're not just having fun, your unconscious is cataloging the properties of matter. Water flows and takes the shape of containers, sand can be poured but also hold shapes when wet, clay is malleable and retains impressions, fabric is flexible and drapes, wood is rigid but can be carved. This material knowledge becomes deeply embedded, allowing you to interact with the physical world with remarkable sophistication. An adult who works skillfully with their hands, whether cooking, building, creating art, or fixing things, is drawing on material intelligence their unconscious developed through countless hours of playful manipulation. They don't need to consciously remember the properties of each material, their hands know, their unconscious knows, guiding their movements with accumulated wisdom. Now let's explore how play teaches the unconscious about probability and randomness. Many forms of play involve elements of chance, dice rolls, card draws, unpredictable bounces. Your unconscious is learning that not everything in life is deterministic, that luck plays a role, that you can do everything right and still lose, or do everything wrong and sometimes win anyway. But the unconscious learns something more sophisticated than just random things happen. It develops an intuitive sense of probability, learning to distinguish between outcomes that are merely unlikely and those that are impossible, between bad luck and bad strategy. Children who play games involving both skill and chance develop a more balanced relationship with uncertainty than those who only play pure skill games or pure chance games. Their unconscious learn that life involves both elements, that you should make good decisions while also accepting that outcomes aren't entirely within your control. This balanced understanding becomes essential for adult well-being, protecting against both the arrogance of believing you control everything and the despair of believing you control nothing. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore scale and proportion, the relationship between size and function, between parts and wholes. When you build with blocks or play with toys of different sizes, your unconscious is learning about spatial relationships, about how smaller things can combine to create larger structures, about how scale affects possibility. A small action figure can fit through a doorway that a large one cannot. 3 small blocks can be stacked to reach the height of 1 large block. These lessons about scale extend far beyond physical objects. Your unconscious applies this understanding to time, meaning that small moments accumulate into long periods, to effort, meaning that small actions compound into significant change, to social groups, meaning that individuals form communities. The ability to think across different scales, to zoom in and out from details to big picture, this cognitive flexibility often traces back to play experiences where your unconscious literally manipulated objects of varying sizes and learned how scale transforms relationships. Here's something subtle about how the unconscious processes energy and effort through play. Every form of physical play teaches you about your body's capabilities and limits. How long can you run before tiring? How much strength does it take to throw a ball that distance? How does rest restore your energy? Your unconscious is building a sophisticated model of your physical resources, learning to budget energy, to recognize fatigue, to know when to push and when to rest. But this understanding extends beyond the purely physical. The unconscious applies similar principles to mental and emotional energy. Adults who manage their resources well, who know when they're depleted, who can pace themselves, who understand their limits without being limited by them, often have unconscious wisdom developed through extensive physical play. The unconscious also uses play to understand transformation and process, how things change from one state to another. When you watch ice melt during play, when you mix colors and create new ones, when you see bread dough rise, your unconscious is learning that change follows patterns, that transformations have sequences and stages. This understanding of process becomes foundational to patience, to learning, to growth. You can't skip steps. Some things take the time they take. Rushing may actually slow the process. Children who engage with materials that transform slowly, clay that must dry, gardens that grow gradually, projects that unfold over time, develop unconscious comfort with process. Their deeper self learn that becoming takes time, that you plant seeds and wait, that not everything can be instant. This stands in stark contrast to modern culture's emphasis on immediate results. The unconscious wisdom developed through slow, transformative play provides a counterbalance, reminding you that some of the most important changes cannot be rushed. And as this chapter draws toward its close, understand this: your unconscious mind has used play to build a comprehensive model of reality, how objects behave, how forces interact, how materials respond, how processes unfold. This model is vast, detailed, constantly updated, and almost entirely implicit. You can't consciously articulate most of what you know about how the world works, yet you navigate physical reality with remarkable competence because your unconscious carries this knowledge. Every time you catch a ball, cook a meal, judge a distance, or predict an outcome, you're drawing on this deep well of intuitive understanding. The world makes sense to you not because someone explained it, but because you played in it, experimented with it, explored it with your whole being. Your unconscious transformed thousands of playful moments into lasting wisdom about the nature of reality itself. Rest deeply now in this knowledge, as sleep carries you further into the night. As the night surrounds you in its gentle embrace, let us explore now how your unconscious mind uses play to navigate the landscape of risk and safety, learning when to venture forward and when to hold back, building the courage that will carry you through life's uncertainties. We begin with a fundamental observation about fear and play. Your unconscious mind uses play to practice being afraid in safe contexts. When a child plays hide-and-seek, they experience genuine anticipation and a touch of fear when being pursued, yet they're also experiencing pleasure. When they ride a swing higher and higher, there's real excitement tinged with the thrill of danger. Your unconscious is learning something crucial here, that fear doesn't always mean genuine threat, that arousal and anxiety can be reinterpreted as excitement, that you can approach the edge of discomfort and discover it's manageable. Psychologists call this graduated exposure, and it happens naturally through play. Each time your unconscious experiences mild fear followed by relief and pleasure, it updates its threat assessment systems, learning to distinguish between actual danger and thrilling challenge. Adults who can take appropriate risks, who aren't paralyzed by anxiety but also aren't reckless, often have unconscious calibration systems refined through years of playful exploration of fear's boundaries. The unconscious also uses play to develop what researchers call stress inoculation, a kind of immunity to being overwhelmed that comes from repeated exposure to manageable challenges. Every competitive game, every physically demanding play session, every moment of struggling with a difficult puzzle exposes you to stress and doses your system can handle. Your unconscious is learning that stress rises and then falls, that discomfort is temporary, that you can tolerate difficult feelings without collapsing. This is profoundly different from being protected from all stress or being overwhelmed by unmanageable stress. Play provides the middle path, regular exposure to challenges that stretch you without breaking you. The physiological stress response that activates during intense play, elevated heart rate, heightened alertness, mobilized energy, becomes familiar to your unconscious. It learns that these sensations don't mean catastrophe, they mean engagement. Adults with resilience often have unconscious associations between activation and capability, between challenge and growth, associations forged during countless hours of demanding play. Here's something remarkable about how the unconscious processes trust through play. Every time you rely on someone during play, catching you when you jump, following the agreed-upon rules, keeping the shared imaginary world intact, you're conducting an experiment in trustworthiness. Your unconscious is gathering data. Can this person be counted on? Do they honor commitments? Will they catch me if I fall? These microassessments accumulate into deep, often unspoken beliefs about whether the world is fundamentally safe or fundamentally dangerous, whether people are generally reliable or generally treacherous. Children who play in environments where trust is consistently honored develop what attachment theorists call secure base, an unconscious confidence that allows them to explore boldly because they trust they can return to safety. Those who experienced betrayal during play, promises broken, rules changed arbitrarily, physical trust violated, may carry unconscious wariness into adulthood, always braced for the moment when support will be withdrawn. The unconscious never forgets these early lessons about whether reaching out leads to connection or disappointment. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore the relationship between risk and reward, learning to make cost-benefit calculations that will guide decision-making throughout life. Every risky move in a game, a bold strategy that might win big or fail spectacularly, a physical challenge that's exciting but could result in injury, a social gamble that might lead to inclusion or rejection, teaches your unconscious about trade-offs. It's learning to assess, is this risk worth taking? What do I gain if I succeed? What do I lose if I fail? How likely is each outcome? These assessments happen mostly beneath awareness, forming what economists call your risk tolerance. But it's not a single, fixed trait. Your unconscious learns through play that risk tolerance should vary by context. Perhaps you're bold in physical domains but cautious in social ones, or vice versa. Adults who can take calculated risks, who can be brave when it matters but prudent when necessary, often have unconscious wisdom developed through diverse play experiences that taught them risk is contextual, not absolute. Now consider how play teaches the unconscious about recovery and resilience. Every time you fall down during play and get back up, every time you lose a game and start another, every time you make a mistake and continue anyway, your unconscious is learning perhaps the most important lesson of all: you can recover. Setbacks aren't permanent. Endings can be beginnings. The game continues. This lived experience of recovery creates what psychologists call bounce-back capacity, the unconscious expectation that you will recover because you always have before. But here's what's crucial: this capacity is built through actual experiences of falling and rising, not through being prevented from falling in the first place. Children who are protected from all difficulty during play, who never experience loss or failure, don't develop robust recovery mechanisms. Their unconscious never got to practice the full cycle: challenge, setback, recovery, growth. It only knows success, which paradoxically creates fragility, because when inevitable failures come later in life, the unconscious has no template for what happens next. The unconscious also develops through play what we might call somatic wisdom, a deep, bodily knowledge about your physical capabilities and limits. When you climb, run, jump, and explore your body's capacities through play, your unconscious is creating an internal map of what you can do. This isn't just about knowing I can jump this high, but about developing proprioception and kinesthetic intelligence, the felt sense of your body moving through space. Adults with good body awareness, who move with confidence and grace, who can learn new physical skills relatively easily, often have this foundation of somatic wisdom established through extensive physical play. Their unconscious maintains a rich, detailed model of their body that can be updated and refined throughout life. Conversely, those who had limited opportunities for physical play sometimes feel disconnected from their bodies, uncertain of their capabilities, because their unconscious never built that foundational body map during the critical windows of childhood. Here's something profound about how the unconscious processes autonomy through play. Play is often one of the first domains where children exercise genuine choice. You decide what to play, how to play it, when to stop and start. Your unconscious is learning. I have agency. My preferences matter. I can make decisions. This experience of autonomy during play becomes a template for self-determination throughout life. Children who are given appropriate freedom in their play, not complete chaos, but genuine choice within safe boundaries, develop unconscious confidence in their decision-making. They learn through experience that their choices have consequences, that they can handle those consequences, that autonomy is both a right and a responsibility. Adults who struggle with decision-making, who constantly seek external validation, who feel paralyzed by choice, sometimes have limited histories of autonomous play. Their unconscious never got sufficient practice with the fundamental experience. I decide, I act, I experience the results, I learn, I decide again. The unconscious mind also uses play to understand interdependence, the delicate balance between self-reliance and collaboration. Some forms of play require complete independence, others demand cooperation, still others involve negotiating when to work alone and when to ask for help. Your unconscious is learning through these varied experiences that neither complete independence nor total dependence serves you well. The wisdom lies in flexibility, in knowing when each mode is appropriate. Adults who can shift fluidly between independence and interdependence, who can both give and receive help gracefully, often learn this balance through diverse play experiences. Their unconscious discover that asking for help isn't weakness, that collaboration often achieves what individual effort cannot, but also that self-reliance has its place. This balanced understanding becomes essential for healthy adult relationships, where the challenge is to be both separate and connected, both autonomous and intimately bound to others. And as we prepare to continue our journey, rest in this understanding. Your unconscious mind has used play to build your relationship with risk, with challenge, with fear, with courage. It has taught you how to venture into uncertainty, how to recover from setbacks, how to trust yourself and others, how to find the balance between boldness and prudence. These aren't abstract concepts but lived experiences, encoded in your nervous system, available to guide you whenever you face difficulty. Even now, as you rest, your unconscious holds all these lessons, all this hard-won wisdom, ready to support you when you need it. You are braver than you know, more resilient than you imagine, because your unconscious has been preparing you through play since your earliest days. Trust in this deeper strength as sleep enfolds you completely. As you rest in the deepest hours of night, let us explore now how your unconscious mind uses play to discover the nature of self, to understand who you are and who you might become, to build the foundation of identity that carries you through all the changes life brings. We begin with a curious truth about mirrors and reflection. When you play, especially when you play alone, you're often your own audience. A child building with blocks, narrating a story to themselves, dancing when no one watches, they're experiencing themselves from both inside and outside simultaneously. Your unconscious is learning to observe yourself, to develop what psychologists call metacognition, awareness of your own thoughts and feelings. During solitary play, you're not just doing, you're noticing yourself doing. This self-reflective capacity, first developed through play, becomes essential for growth throughout life. The ability to step back and observe your own patterns, to notice when you're stuck or when you're flourishing, to adjust your approach based on self-awareness, all of this traces back to those early moments of play where your unconscious learned it could watch itself, could know itself, could be both subject and object simultaneously. The unconscious also uses play to explore continuity and change in identity, the paradox that you remain yourself even as you constantly transform. When you play the same game repeatedly over months or years, your unconscious notices something remarkable. You're the same person playing, yet you're also different. You're better at it now, you approach it differently, you understand it more deeply. Your unconscious is learning that identity has both stable elements and fluid ones, that you is both a constant and a process. Children who engage in long-term play projects, building an elaborate structure over time, developing an ongoing imaginary world, practicing a skill that gradually improves, develop unconscious comfort with the idea that you can be both unchanging and constantly changing. This paradoxical understanding becomes crucial for adult identity, allowing you to maintain a coherent sense of self even as you grow, learn, and transform across decades. Here's something profound about how the unconscious processes uniqueness through play. As you play, especially in groups, you begin to notice what makes you different from others. You discover you're faster at this, slower at that, you prefer these games over those, you have a distinctive style of playing. Your unconscious is building what psychologists call differentiation, an understanding of your particular qualities, preferences, and characteristics. But it's doing something more subtle, it's learning that difference doesn't mean deficiency. When play is healthy, your unconscious discovers that diversity of abilities and preferences enriches the group, that your particular way of being has value, that uniqueness is something to celebrate rather than hide. Adults with strong, confident identities often had play experiences where their individuality was welcomed. Their unconscious learned early that being yourself is not just acceptable but essential, that the goal isn't to be like everyone else but to discover and express your authentic nature. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore the many roles you might inhabit, not as fixed identities but as fluid possibilities. When you play at being a parent, a hero, a villain, a teacher, a student, you're trying on different ways of being in the world. Your unconscious isn't confused, thinking you actually are these things. Instead, it's conducting experiments. What would it feel like to be powerful? To be nurturing? To be mischievous? To be wise? Each role you inhabit during play adds to your unconscious understanding of the full range of human experience. This role experimentation becomes the foundation for what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to show up differently in different contexts. Adults who can be authoritative at work but playful at home, serious in crisis but lighthearted in leisure, are drawing on an unconscious repertoire of roles first explored through play. They learn that you contain multitudes, that you can shift between different ways of being without losing your essential self. Now let's explore how play teaches the unconscious about values, what you truly care about, what matters to you at the deepest level. During play, you make hundreds of small choices that reveal your priorities. Do you play fair even when you could cheat? Do you help a struggling playmate or focus on winning? Do you value creativity over competition, connection over achievement? Your unconscious is monitoring these choices, not judging them but learning from them. This is who you are. These patterns of choices, accumulated across thousands of play experiences, crystallize into what we call character. Your values aren't just ideas you learn from others, they're truths your unconscious discovered about yourself through your own behavior during play. Adults with strong moral centers often had play experiences where they faced genuine ethical choices, where cheating was possible but they chose honesty, where they could exclude but chose inclusion, where their actions revealed their deepest commitments. The unconscious also develops through play what we might call authenticity recognition, the ability to sense when you're being true to yourself and when you're not. During play, there are moments when everything flows, when you feel completely yourself, when your actions align perfectly with your inner state. There are other moments when you're pretending to enjoy something you don't, when you're going along with others despite internal resistance, when something feels forced or false. Your unconscious is learning to distinguish between these states, developing an internal compass that points toward authenticity. This compass, calibrated through play, guides adult choices about careers, relationships, lifestyles. People who make authentic choices, who can say this isn't for me even when it looks good from the outside, are often listening to this unconscious wisdom, trusting the felt sense of rightness or wrongness that first learned to speak during play. Here's something beautiful about how the unconscious processes self-compassion through play. When you make mistakes during play, miss a catch, lose a game, say something awkward, you have immediate feedback about how you treat yourself in moments of failure. Do you berate yourself? Do you laugh it off? Do you get curious about what went wrong? Your unconscious is learning your default relationship with your own imperfection. Children who play in environments where mistakes are treated lightly, where failure is normalized, where perfection isn't expected, develop unconscious patterns of self-kindness. When they inevitably struggle later in life, their unconscious knows how to respond, with patience rather than punishment, with curiosity rather than contempt, with encouragement rather than criticism. This self-compassion, established through play, becomes one of the most valuable psychological resources an adult can possess, the ability to be on your own side even when things are difficult. The unconscious mind also uses play to understand your relationship with visibility, whether you want to be seen or hidden, noticed or anonymous. Some children naturally seek the spotlight during play, performing for others, drawing attention to their achievements. Others prefer to play quietly, to observe rather than be observed, to enjoy without displaying. Your unconscious is discovering your comfort level with visibility, your need for recognition or privacy. This isn't good or bad, it's simply part of who you are. Adults who understand and honor their visibility preferences often had play experiences where both being seen and being private were acceptable. Their unconscious learned that you can choose when to shine and when to retreat, that neither constant performance nor complete invisibility serves you well, that the wisdom lies in knowing what you need in each moment. And as this chapter comes to rest, understand this: your unconscious mind has used play to construct your sense of self, not as a fixed thing but as a living, growing understanding of who you are. Every moment of play added another thread to this intricate tapestry: your preferences, your values, your capabilities, your uniqueness, your way of being in the world. This self-knowledge isn't abstract or intellectual, it's embodied, felt, known in your bones. Your unconscious holds this knowledge tenderly, updating it constantly as you continue to discover yourself through living. Even now, even as you rest, this process continues. You are still becoming, still unfolding, still discovering new dimensions of who you are and who you might yet be. The play never truly ends, it simply takes new forms, inviting you always toward greater self-understanding and fuller expression of your authentic nature. Rest deeply in this truth as the night holds you safe. As we arrive at the final chapter of our journey together, as sleep holds you in its deepest embrace, let us explore how your unconscious mind uses play to understand the great mystery of time itself, the flow of moments, the arc of experience, the eternal dance between past, present, and future. We begin with a profound realization about the eternal now. When you are fully absorbed in play, time behaves strangely. Hours pass like minutes, or single moments stretch into what feels like eternity. Your unconscious is experiencing what philosophers call temporal transcendence, liberation from the usual tyranny of clock time. During deep play, you exist completely in the present moment, neither haunted by the past nor anxious about the future. Your unconscious is discovering something essential, that the richest form of being isn't scattered across time but gathered into now. This capacity for presence, first tasted during play, remains available throughout life. Adults who can fully inhabit the present moment, whether in conversation, in work, in love, in simple activities, are accessing a state their unconscious first discovered during childhood play. They learn that the deepest satisfaction comes not from rushing toward the future or clinging to the past, but from being completely here, completely now. The unconscious also uses play to understand cycles and rhythms, the way things end and begin again, the pattern of effort and rest, the seasons of intensity and quietness. Every game has its arc, beginning, middle, end. Then another game begins. Every play session involves periods of high energy followed by natural pauses. Your unconscious is learning that life isn't linear but cyclical, that endings aren't failures but completions, that rest isn't wasted time but necessary renewal. Children who experience the full cycle of play, building up and breaking down, starting and finishing, playing and resting, develop unconscious comfort with life's natural rhythms. They learn that you can complete something and still begin again, that exhaustion is followed by restoration, that intensity and quietness both have their place. Adults who can honor these rhythms, who can finish projects and start new ones, who can work intensely and then truly rest, are drawing on wisdom their unconscious absorbed through the cycles of play. Here's something beautiful about how the unconscious processes legacy through play. When you create something during play, a sandcastle, a drawing, an elaborate imaginary world, you often know it's temporary. The tide will wash away the castle, the drawing might be discarded, the imaginary world exists only as long as you maintain it. Yet you create with full commitment anyway. Your unconscious is learning one of life's most profound lessons, that meaning doesn't require permanence, that value isn't measured by duration, that the act of creating is itself the point. Children who build elaborate structures knowing they'll be dismantled, who invest fully in games knowing they'll end, develop unconscious wisdom about impermanence. They learn that you can care deeply about something temporary, that endings don't negate the value of what came before, that the joy is in the doing, not just in what endures. This understanding becomes essential for adult well-being, protecting against the paralysis that comes from believing that only permanent achievements matter. The unconscious mind also uses play to explore anticipation and memory, the way past and future frame the present. When you play a favorite game, part of the joy comes from remembering previous times you played, from anticipating the pleasure to come. Your unconscious is learning that experience exists in 3 temporal dimensions simultaneously: the actual present moment, the remembered past that gives it context, and the anticipated future that gives it direction. This temporal richness becomes the texture of adult experience. People who can fully experience life's pleasures are often those whose unconscious learn through play to hold all 3 dimensions at once, to be present while also drawing on memory and anticipation, to let past and future enrich rather than eclipse the now. Now consider how play teaches the unconscious about developmental time, the way you grow and change across the lifespan. When you return to a game you loved as a child, it feels different now. It might seem simpler, or you might notice layers of complexity you missed before. Your unconscious is discovering that you experience the same thing differently as you grow, that development isn't just accumulation but transformation, that who you become changes what everything means. Children who have opportunities to revisit play activities across years, the same playground at different ages, the same games at different developmental stages, develop unconscious understanding that growth is real, that you're genuinely different at 7 than at 3, at 10 than at 7. This understanding becomes the foundation for lifelong learning. Adults who can continue growing, who remain open to new understanding, who don't feel trapped in fixed ways of being, often have unconscious patterns established through play, patterns that taught them you can return to familiar territory and discover it anew through your changed perspective. The unconscious also develops through play what we might call temporal flexibility, the ability to move fluidly between different time scales and tempos. Some play is fast and urgent, demanding split-second responses. Other play is slow and contemplative, unfolding over hours or days. Your unconscious is learning that different activities require different temporal modes, that you can shift your internal clock to match the needs of the situation. Adults who can be quick when necessary but patient when appropriate, who can think both short-term and long-term, who can match their rhythm to the context, are drawing on unconscious flexibility developed through diverse play experiences. They learn that time isn't a single, fixed pace but something you can dance with, adjusting your tempo to create harmony with what the moment requires. Here's something profound about how the unconscious processes narrative time through play. When you create stories during play, you're manipulating time in sophisticated ways. You can make hours pass in moments, meaning and then they traveled for many days, or you can stretch moments into elaborate detail. You can flash back to past events, jump forward to imagine futures, or exist in a timeless once upon a time. Your unconscious is discovering that time is narratively flexible, that you can structure experience in different ways, that the story you tell about events matters as much as the events themselves. This narrative flexibility becomes crucial for adult identity and meaning-making. The way you store your life, which moments you emphasize, how you connect past to present to future, where you locate yourself in the larger arc, draws on skills your unconscious first practiced during narrative play. You learn that you're not just living in time, you're also creating meaning from time through the stories you construct. The unconscious mind also uses play to understand mortality and finitude, though not morbidly, but naturally and gently. When a game ends, when a play session concludes, when you outgrow toys or activities you once loved, your unconscious encounters endings without the weight of ultimate loss. You experience that things end, and you discover that you continue. The game ends, but you remain. The play session concludes, but tomorrow brings new play. Your unconscious is learning that endings are part of life's rhythm, that completion isn't catastrophe, that you can say goodbye to what was and still welcome what comes next. Children who experience appropriate endings during play, who are allowed to complete games, to finish projects, to move on when ready, develop unconscious wisdom about closure. They learn that you can honor what was while also releasing it, that holding on and letting go are both acts of love. This wisdom becomes invaluable in adult life, where loss is inevitable and the question isn't whether things will end but how you'll meet those endings when they come. And now, as our journey together draws to its close, as these final moments of our story settle around you like a soft blanket, rest in this ultimate truth. Your unconscious mind has used play to teach you about time itself, its flow and its stillness, its cycles and its linearity, its preciousness and its abundance. Every moment of play was a moment of being fully alive, fully present, fully yourself. And though those specific moments have passed, they haven't disappeared. They live on in your unconscious as wisdom, as capacity, as the foundation of who you are. The child who played is not lost in the past but exists eternally in the depths of your being, still curious, still creative, still capable of wonder. That playful consciousness doesn't diminish with age, it simply goes underground, waiting patiently for moments when you remember how to access it, when you give yourself permission to play again, to experience the eternal now, to discover once more that joy and growth are inseparable, that play is not what you do but what you are. As you drift now into the deepest sleep, know that your unconscious continues its patient work, integrating these truths, weaving them into the fabric of your being, preparing you for tomorrow's adventures. The play continues, even in dreams, even in darkness, even in rest. You are held, you are safe, you are becoming. The unconscious never stops its loving work of helping you grow, guiding you home to yourself, reminding you always that life itself is the greatest play of all, serious and sacred, but also joyful, creative, and endlessly renewing. Sleep now, deeply and peacefully, held in the arms of this ancient wisdom, knowing that you are more than you imagine, capable of more than you know, forever growing, forever playing, forever becoming more fully yourself.